Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This is our special report, one-on-one. I am PCMTV founder Jimmy Young. I'm joined by the greenstate.com senior content producer, Cara Wietstock from Washington State. Cara, thank you so much for taking some time this week with me.
Hey, Jimmy, it's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, I certainly appreciate talking to a media comrade in a cannabis industry that we know has been around for a long time, but the last really 6 years since I started doing a podcast and learning about the industry, it's a crazy thing. It's a fascinating industry. There's so many elements to it. There's so many things as a media or a content producer for you to do stories on. How challenging has it been to find the right stories for you guys in that and try to stay current with the current research that's out there?
At Green State, I have had the really beautiful opportunity to cover culture and lifestyle. Prior to that, I was doing solely business to business.
Hmm.
So the breadth of content got a lot wider when I was able to cover culture, lifestyle, art, so many things cannabis touches. However, getting people to read it is actually the largest struggle. I'll have written an article 45 times and speak to people I'm trying to reach that aren't seeing it, and they'll say they wanted to know about that content that's already out there. And so I have found that I have a lot of things to say about cannabis, from evergreen content about how to roll joints to studies that are coming out and pouring over that data to fun documentaries that are coming out. And what I really want to know is how to access those people that want to know about it and can't find it. That's been my greatest challenge. But as for covering cannabis and staying correct and relevant,
Right.
it's been challenging because we're so quick to be first
Yeah.
that a lot of due diligence has gone out the window, in my opinion, on the beat. Um, there's really great players and people that are doing really great things, but I think that we could use to take a breath and recall some sources and double check dot some T's and cross some I's, especially on medical studies.
Yeah. And let's talk about medical studies just for a second here, because Normal is great about putting out the factoid that there's been 35,000 studies done on cannabis over the last 12 years or 15 years. And it seems, I don't know about you, but it seems I'm seeing more negative research being reported on since the DEA basically postponed their rescheduling hearings, since the green rush has been stopped cold. Have you noticed that
Mhm.
there's been more negative research being out there?
I open my news app in the mornings and I keep seeing CHS stories, the same cannabis hyperemesis syndrome. I'm so sorry if I said that word incorrectly. The same story over and over. And while I want that story to be told, I don't think there's any harm in telling all sides. Uh, what about the good stuff, right? I see all of the cannabis media outlets covering positive, negative, neutral, and I only see negative from larger outlets.
Right.
And that's disheartening. And friend, I've also seen them covering things later than cannabis media, which is also disheartening. Um, I don't know if I can track it to the FDA, but I can say that I have become very fixated on Ireland's decriminalization policy. And as soon as they were speaking up about decrim in Parliament, I believe it's Parliament, the news cycle went heavy against cannabis. It was all about crime and possession.
Right.
So I don't think that that's far-fetched to put one and two together at all.
Do you know Martin Condon by any chance from Martin's World? He does a podcast in Ireland. I'm going to introduce you.
Maybe you should. Yeah, I've
You're gonna
just
love.
been watching every story.
I told Martin, I said, just read the phone book. I'll be entertained. I love his accent. It's really
Oh
cool.
yeah.
And I've known him for 5 or 6 years. I do want to talk a bit, since we're both media people, how media writes about the cannabis industry, how television media covers the cannabis industry. And every time I see a network, whether it be CNN or Fox or local news, when they have a cannabis story, it's always a tight shot of a smoking joint.
Yeah.
And you mentioned due diligence. They don't understand, the people that are producing the news don't understand that half the market now doesn't smoke the joint. They're doing vaping,
Mhm.
they're doing edibles, they're doing tinctures. I mean, it shows ignorance on my part, or laziness, or lack of due diligence, and it bothers me a big time. The other thing that bothers me is the term pot shop. We don't have booze shops, do we? No, we have liquor stores, right? And alcohol
Yeah.
outlets, but they constantly use that term. And I have a dear friend who owns a dispensary in Massachusetts, and he's the one who said they don't call them booze shop. Why are they doing that to pot shops? Are you aware of? Do you see that happening?
There, I keep thinking through Google Alerts as we're talking because that's so much of my day is just poring over them. And there was a shift in mainstream media to use cannabis over marijuana in the last few years. And so now it used to be separated by stories, like anti-cannabis stories would often use marijuana, and that's how I'd find those. And then all the pro-cannabis stories would use cannabis. Pot shop, I think, is definitely. I think all of these issues with verbiage and lexicon from mainstream sources, for me, I have trouble digesting when it feels I'm being talked down to.
Right.
When I speak with my editor, Rochelle, we say pot shop because it feels good coming out of your mouth. Like it doesn't get caught on a pot chop. It's like we don't always say that, but it's when you're talking about dispensaries for a good 20 minutes, it's nice to switch up the words. But if I was being spoken to by someone who's anti-cannabis and having a conversation of that regard, the way someone says something takes more meaning when you're hearing a news story and we can understand from the subtext that it's not a positive connotation,
Mhm.
that does not feel good. And that's often what I feel from um, news, either television or written word
Yeah.
in some outlets.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I want to talk a little bit now about the federal government, what's been going on with the DEA, and now that we have a Republican control of Congress. Are you what I mean, I can't, here's what my feeling about this. I can't believe I have my faith in the Republican Party to do the right thing, to regulate the cannabis and hemp industries at the same time and actually have an opportunity to do that. I just don't know if they're going to do it.
It's so hard to make predictions right now about that.
Mhm.
Things have been really unpredictable this week. Um,
You know,
I am
hang on a second.
also,
I'm from Massachusetts. There's a big reason for that because the head of the head of the beast is very unpredictable. Let's just leave it at
yeah,
that. Sorry.
yeah. And I lost my train of thought because I started thinking about beasts.
Yeah.
But um, the federal government, decriminalization, rescheduling, I always look towards where the money is flowing with the federal government,
Yeah.
and rescheduling would be a boon for pharmaceuticals. I don't know how many Republicans have investments in pharmaceuticals, but I think that would dictate how things sway.
Mhm.
Um, I hope I'm not being too candid. And I am also a part of the cohort that I would love decriminalization at the federal level and states to regulate their own situations, but
It
I'm
makes
not
sense,
sure we're in that headspace.
but it makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And nothing in our
And then the
government,
wild card of hemp.
right?
Wow, we've just got a whole.
Well, let's talk about that because I really believe that when the Farm Bill came out in 2018, and I remember sharing the news with two people at an event that night that were both Dr. Uma Dhanabalan, if you know who she is, she
I
travels
have met
around.
Dr. Uma,
Dr. Uma's
I
awesome.
think.
He wrote the Exit Drug book. And another guy that was very pro cannabis for normal and now owns a dispensary. And I said, they just legalized the plant. And they said, they did what? I said, no, they just legalized cannabis sativa. That's the plant, isn't it? Yeah, that's the plant. Well, they just legalized it. They're
Yeah.
going to call 0.3% hemp. How they're going to measure it, I have no idea. Did they have an idea that they could again, delay, 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 and pit the hemp industry against the cannabis THC industry and really make it as difficult as possible to survive in this industry.
Are you
I still think
positing
there is.
that the delay was to save room for the infighting?
Yeah. Develop the infighting.
Interesting thought.
Developing the infighting. Developing it.
Uh-huh.
Human beings are always going to look to cut corners. How can I get high from this 0.3% amount of THC? You can do it. Okay? You can do it. And
It
so,
certainly left space for more regulated brands that had the capital to
yep.
turn over to hemp, and it
Mhm.
grew that absolutely
Yeah. And
interesting.
now the industry, both sides of the industry are want regulation. Think about it. The FDA had 6 years to actually come up with how to put CBD into food or beverages, and they still have not figured that out yet. Okay. So again, you mentioned money. I'm not that naive. I know money's a big player in every decision that is made in life these days. Okay.
Mhm.
Including voting. People always vote with their pocketbooks or their wallets.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's the right thing to do when you're dealing with a plant that God put on this earth to actually help human beings.
Yeah.
There, no one's can any at this point, you get 90% of people understand there are medicinal qualities in this plant.
Mhm.
70% they're saying it should be legalized. Well, that's easy to say. I'm trying to get it to be normalized, and that's going to take even longer than legalization. But how can this industry learn and adapt to the challenges ahead to make it work for both sides on the plant? Is there
Talking the
room?
industry or the lawmakers?
Both, actually, because you can't do one without the other, can you?
Yeah. I feel for regulated brands and dispensaries in this,
Right.
and I also can't argue with taking the hemp route if you're seeing more income. It's a really impossible, it's not black and white in choosing if you care about this plant. Uh, I will say there are more good players in the regulated world than I would say are, there's less risk on the whole
Yeah.
shopping products in the
Right.
regulated market,
Of course.
I believe, than the
Hmm.
hemp market.
Yeah.
If I know a loved one is shopping the hemp market, I will find them brands I trust to shop. I won't just say go for it. But if it was regulated, I might just say go trust your bud tender, right?
Right. And
So that's
test
how
the
I feel
result.
about that.
Yeah.
But there's hemp drinks in my fridge. I'm not
I understand.
hating, so
I, I understand. And it's something, and I just don't know if we have the right, any leadership right now is educated enough on this plant to make the right decisions. That's what I'm most
right.
fearful of. That's what I'm
I
most,
think the big mistake of the Farm Bill leaving that loophole open showed the level of wisdom we're working with.
yep. For the lack thereof and the laziness and due diligence. Okay, I said it. Okay. I'm the talk show host. You're the media journalist. I have no problem. Let's talk about what's going on in Colorado Springs because it really is another fascinating thing about the cannabis industry and the role that democracy plays in it. If you have state laws and city ordinances that you abide by, and it says in there, if you get enough signatures, you get this question on the ballot, and if the ballot question passes, it becomes a law or it becomes enacted by the city or town at that point. To me, that's the way democracy is supposed to work.
Yeah.
And then we have the players that are in the power seats, if you will, in the cities and towns, think they're running, major corporations, and it just, it feeds the ego. And I know there's more men than women on this. I'm sorry. I apologize for my race and my gender all the time, all the time. That
You
being
don't have to
said,
apologize, just use it to make everyone equal. And that's all good. And we're
that would be
equal. We're
nice.
good.
That would be nice. Certainly would be nice. So now you've got Colorado Springs. They've got a ballot question. They passed adult use. Yes.
Mhm.
By the way, I read your article. I didn't realize 144 medical dispensaries in Colorado Springs.
Yeah, they just won't allow rec in the city limits. It's also a heavily military town. A lot of their income comes from the federal military, I believe.
Oh, absolutely. It's at the Olympic training centers out in Colorado. Everything goes back to sports with me, by the way. So that's how I know Colorado Springs.
Yeah, they
So,
train at high altitude. Yep.
right. And what do you think is going to happen in Colorado Springs? Because I just saw, again, they're going to have another vote. They're going to have a
Yeah.
special vote now just for the adult use.
It was actually really disheartening the way the city council spoke. They literally called the voters confused about their voting
Yeah.
for the ballot question because of the second initiative that the city council put on the ballot to make it confusing. Uh, and so many advocates of cannabis are concerned that they want to take this vote to April because there will not be as many voters turning out.
Right.
So they're
Because
hoping that it slides under and the voters that show up vote to repeal. Um, so I think it's up to the activists in town to keep people informed.
is it a simple majority or does it have to be 60% like a constitutional amendment like the state of Florida?
Oh, I don't know if this the repeal is,
Right.
but the ballot initiative was 57, I believe, passed. So that one didn't need to be 60. But yeah, Florida really got that wasn't fun for the people that were pro weed over there.
Right. And it's really interesting because I have a dear friend who is, I could call him my party partner. And when Massachusetts had the 2016 vote on the ballot for adult use, I voted for, he voted against. He is a medical card holder and he's a great party partner. I can tell you that. That being said, and I asked him, I said, why are you doing that? Don't you understand this could help the industry, could help the environment, help the economy? He goes, I'm already in the club.
Yeah,
I got my card. I'm in the club,
I'm
and I use
happy.
it and I use it medicinally. I use it medicinally. Have I used it recreationally? I hate that word. Yes, when I was in my 20s, absolutely.
Mhm.
But I learned many lessons in my 20s that I, still abide by in my 60s. Supposedly anyway, not a lot, but some anyway. Um, is that what you think that's what's going through the voters' minds? Is it why do we need adult use? We have 144 dispensaries. Medical people are out there. I'm going out on a limb thinking that all the adult users know somebody with a medical card who could do the buying for them and gift it to
Yeah,
them. I mean, it happens. This is human behavior. This is why they
it begs the question of why we needed it to
what's that?
begin with.
What's that?
It
Sorry.
really begs the question of why any state needed to turn over. I don't know if you know this about me, but I bud tended starting in 2012 in San Francisco. I've attended in medical in Arizona, San Francisco, California, Southern California beach cities, and then in recreational in Washington. So I've actually held these conversations with so many people about in medical spaces about legalization. And whenever they would say they were against it, I would be shocked and taken aback because I was just so jaded's the wrong word, but it's all that's coming. I really thought that the legalization, it would be free, the plant would be so free, but as we get closer, the more legalized, the more restricted
Right.
things feel. Um, so I think some of the people against medical turning over to rec may have that foreshadowing in mind.
Okay.
Others may believe if they don't have any need for cannabis, I think a lot of the crowd says there's medical, the people that need it will do that. And I have to say an interesting thing that happens when you do turn over and allow rec dispensaries. I am a medical patient in Washington, and people ask me, why would you need that if you have legal rec dispensaries? So it's like a very interesting two sides of that coin.
Right. But I have an answer for that. There's a 20% discount on the medical side
Yeah, I
in
don't have to pay
Massachusetts. In
tax,
Massachusetts. Right.
and I can actually, I need more people to realize in Washington, it's a felony to grow cannabis unless you're a medical patient.
Right. And let's not go there. But I do want to, now that I know that you have a background as bud tending, one of my pet peeves about the industry, and I go to a lot of dispensaries now because I represent
Mhm.
Yellow Labs, um, people still buy their flower and their concentrates based on THC percentage.
Yeah,
And especially, let's just talk about the flower for a second. There's so many other elements in this living thing, this living flower. Plus, every individual human has a different endocannabinoid system, a different metabolism. So it impacts everybody. differently. So by
Yeah.
saying, well, it has, 30% THC, you could probably get higher from a 17% strain if it's done with the proper terpene profile. Am I right or wrong?
You're right. And there's even more. There's flavonoids, there's alkaloids. There's so many compounds in this plant working together in ways that we cannot even understand.
Right.
We may one day, we don't right now, and we keep thinking we do, and it's the same as we talked about in the beginning. Call back, the media is so wants to be first, so we jump a little too quickly sometimes, and I think that as scientists also want to give you this information about cannabis, and we're so hungry for a solid foundation. We're like, that is the truth. That is how I know weed. But it's so much more than we can understand. And I think bud tenders are just surviving based on customer feedback. I personally shop by lineage always. I buy plants with parent plants I recognize and know will make me feel the way that I'd like to.
Right.
And I shop by brand so that I know it won't make my throat hurt because of pesticides hiding in there, because those
Mhm.
don't have to be labeled in my state. Um, and I don't even know the THC percentage of anything that I purchase. I
Okay.
like to know about terpenes,
Yeah.
but if I'm lighting it with a lighter, which I do sometimes, um,
Right.
it's burned off. So
Right. No. I get it. I get it. And look, it's a fascinating industry. That's the way I look at it. Greenstate.com is the media outlet that you write for with Rochelle,
yeah.
who I've known for a few years now, since the inception of the website. You can see your work there. That's where I see your work. That's how I got to know you a little bit. Now I get to know you more. And I want to thank you so much for joining us here on our little one-on-one interview on Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I think I messed up. Did you know there's a place that covers all the cannabis news you need? Welcome to Cannabis Media, your go-to for all things cannabis. PCM is the CNBC of weed, bringing you the latest news and talk shows with a twist. We've got 16 state correspondents and multimedia journalists from around the US and Canada.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with Big Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report.
I'm Karen Black from Green Finger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report.
I'm Amy Carter from Michigan Weedsters.
Andrew Behringer here reporting from Washington, D.C.
Debbie Fazy with the Canadian Toke of the Week.
It all started back in 2018 when founder Jimmy Young kicked off the In the Weeds podcast. His mission? Documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition. Fast forward to today and we've got Cannabis Coast to Coast with Elena Pinto, delivering the nation's only TV-style cannabis news show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast, PCMTV's weekly roundup of industry news from California to New York. I'm Elena Pinto.
As of August 2024, PCM has racked up over 1.2 million views and 14.5 million impressions on our YouTube channel. With 15,000 subscribers and growing, our reach is spreading like wildfire. PCM's website, YouTube, Rumble, Discord, Roku, Twitch, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and even our very own PCMTV app. Get your cannabis news fix with Cannabis Media. We're here to keep you informed and entertained. Stay tuned and stay lifted.